They say the heart is just a place where blood moves, where life keeps time. But mine learned something else the moment you arrived. It learned how to remember, how to stay. You're not a thought I visit or a feeling that passes through. I carry you. In the silence between breaths, in the weight of ordinary days, in moments when no one's watching, you're already there. You are in my heart, not as a promise, not as a memory, but as a truth that keeps choosing me every single day. You are in my heart in a way that doesn't need permission or explanation, not loudly, not dramatically, but steadily, like something that's always been there even before I knew how to name it. You didn't arrive with noise, you didn't demand space. You just stayed. And somehow the heart understood before the mind ever caught up. It adjusted its rhythm. It learned a new weight. It made room without asking what it would cost. That's how I know this isn't temporary, because temporary things rush in and rush out. This didn't rush. This settled. It chose stillness. It chose depth. It chose to exist even when nothing was being said. There are moments when the world feels heavy, when days stack up one after another and everything feels like effort. In those moments, I don't look for answers. I don't search for signs. I don't even look forward. I look inward. And there you are, not as an escape, but as a reminder. A reminder that something real exists, something honest, something untouched by the chaos outside. You're there when I'm strong, and you're there when I'm not pretending to be. That matters. That changes things. Because love that only survives in perfect conditions isn't love. What lives in my heart with you survives the ordinary, the difficult, the quiet, and the uncertain. I've learned that the heart doesn't carry people the way hands do. It doesn't hold tight or let go suddenly. It carries them like gravity carries the earth, without effort, without pause, even when distance exists, even when time stretches thin, even when silence fills the space between words. Silence doesn't remove you. Distance doesn't weaken you. Time doesn't dilute you. You're not affected by those things. You move underneath them. You remain constant while everything else shifts. Some nights are loud with thoughts. Some days are crowded with responsibilities. But there's a place beneath all of that where it's calm. That place knows your name without speaking it. That place feels you without trying. I don't have to reach for you. I don't have to imagine you. I don't have to convince myself you're real. You exist there naturally. And that's the kind of presence that doesn't fade. That's the kind of love that doesn't need to be proven. You are in my heart when I succeed and realize who I want to turn toward. You are in my heart when I fail and realize who I don't have to hide from. You are in my heart in the small decisions, in the pauses before I speak, in the moments when I choose patience over a reaction. You've changed the way I move through the world without ever asking me to change. That's rare. That's powerful. I don't carry you like a memory. Memories belong to the past. You're not behind me. I don't carry you like a hope. Hopes belong to the future. You're not waiting somewhere ahead. You exist in the present, in the now, in the breath I'm taking without thinking about it, in the way my heart recognizes something familiar even when everything else feels uncertain. There are people we admire. There are people we desire. And then there are people who become part of our inner structure, the way we stand, the way we endure, the way we believe. You are that. You didn't decorate my heart. You became part of its foundation. And foundations don't announce themselves. They just hold everything together quietly, faithfully, every single day. Even when you're not here, you're present. That's the strange part, the honest part. Presence isn't about distance or closeness. It's about impact. And you've left your mark in places that don't disappear when the room goes quiet. I can be surrounded by people, noise, movement, and still feel you in the pause between moments. Not as a distraction, not as a longing that hurts, but as something steady that reminds me I'm not empty. Absence usually creates a gap, a hollow space where something used to be. But with you, absence does something different. It doesn't take away, it reveals, it shows me how deeply someone can exist without standing in front of me. You don't vanish when you're gone. You don't fade when time stretches. You remain, like a low current running beneath everything I do, unnoticed by others but undeniable to me. There are days when I don't think about you directly. I don't replay words. I don't search for signs. I just move through life. And then I notice it. The way I slow down before reacting, the way I listen more than I speak, the way I choose patience instead of force. That's you. That's the effect you have. Not loud, not dramatic, just real. You've become part of how I operate, how I breathe through the world. I've learned that connection doesn't depend on constant contact. Some things weaken when they're not fed attention every moment. This doesn't. This holds its shape even in silence. especially in silence. Silence doesn't scare it. Silence gives it room to exist honestly. When words stop, what's real stays, and you stay. There's a strength in knowing someone is with you without needing proof, without messages, without reassurances, without explanations. That kind of trust doesn't come from promises, it comes from consistency, from knowing that what lives inside the heart isn't shaken by temporary gaps or unanswered moments. I don't question you when you're not here. I don't doubt what we are, because doubt usually grows where things are fragile. This isn't fragile. Sometimes I catch myself reacting as if you're watching, not out of fear, not out of pressure, but out of respect. A. If your presence has raised the standard of who I want to be, that's not something absence should be able to do, but it does. You influence without trying, you guide without speaking, you're there in the choices that no one applauds, in the moments that don't make stories but shape character. The world teaches us that if we can't touch something, it's not real, that if we can't see someone, they're gone. But the heart doesn't work like that. The heart keeps what matters close, regardless of geography or time. It keeps what's essential accessible at all moments. And you are essential, not because you fill a void, but because you belong there naturally. I don't measure your presence by how often we connect. I measure it by how deeply you're integrated. You show up when I'm calm. You show up when I'm tired. You show up when I don't even realize I need grounding. That kind of presence isn't accidental. It's earned. Absence usually teaches people how to let go. This absence taught me how to hold without gripping, how to care without control, how to trust without guarantees. You didn't teach me that by instruction. You taught me by simply being who you are and letting that exist freely in my heart. There's comfort in knowing that even when paths don't overlap perfectly, something still aligns underneath it all. Something solid. Something unmoved by temporary separation. You're not something I wait for anxiously. You're something I carry confidently. And that changes the way absence feels. It stops being empty space and becomes quiet assurance. You are present in the way I steady myself, in the way I pause instead of panic, in the way I allow moments to unfold without forcing them. Even when you're not here, you are in my heart, not as a question, not as a wish, but as a constant presence that doesn't ask for attention yet never disappears. You didn't make me stronger by standing in front of me and telling me what to be. You did it by allowing me to be seen without armor. That's where the strength came from. Not from protection, not from control, but from the rare freedom of not having to perform. Around you, I don't have to explain my silence or decorate my flaws. I don't have to turn pain into something impressive. I can let it exist. And somehow that honesty doesn't weaken me, it steadies me. There's a kind of courage that comes from confrontation. And then there's the quieter kind, the kind that shows up when someone trusts you with their presence without demanding anything in return. That's what you offered. And it changed the way I understand strength. Strength isn't always loud. It doesn't always push forward. Sometimes it stands still and allows itself to be known. Sometimes it admits uncertainty without fear of losing respect. I used to believe that vulnerability was something you reveal once you're certain you'll be protected. But with you, vulnerability came first. Not because I was fearless, but because something in your presence made fear unnecessary. It wasn't reassurance through words. It was consistency through behavior. You stayed the same whether I was open or guarded, whether I was confident or unsure. That kind of steadiness teaches the heart that it's safe to open without conditions. When I let my guard down, I didn't feel exposed, I felt grounded, like I had finally stopped carrying weight I didn't need. You didn't fix anything, you didn't rescue me, you didn't turn my struggles into lessons, you simply stayed present. And in that presence, I found balance. That's where strength grows, not in being saved, but in being accepted exactly where you stand. There are parts of me I don't offer easily, parts shaped by disappointment, by loss, by moments where trust didn't return what it promised. I didn't plan to show you those parts. They surfaced naturally. And when they did, nothing collapsed, nothing changed. That told me more than any reassurance ever could. It told me that vulnerability doesn't always lead to damage. Sometimes it leads to connection that's honest enough to survive reality. I've learned that true strength doesn't require constant control. It requires confidence in what you can endure. Being vulnerable with you showed me that I can endure more than I thought, not because pain disappeared, but because it didn't define me. It didn't take over. It had a place, and then it passed. You didn't try to rush it. You let it move at its own pace. That patience gave me room to breathe. You made it clear without saying it directly that I didn't need to be exceptional to be worthy. I didn't need to be flawless to be respected. I didn't need to hide my doubts to be valued. That realization changes a person. It changes how they speak, how they listen, how they show up for others. It teaches them to lead with honesty instead of defense. There's a strength in knowing that someone sees your weaker moments and doesn't use them as leverage, doesn't turn them into currency, doesn't store them for later. You never treated vulnerability as something fragile. You treated it as something human. And that allowed me to reclaim parts of myself I had kept quiet for too long. Because of you, I don't mistake hardness for resilience anymore. I don't confuse silence with power. I understand now that strength can be gentle without being weak, that openness can exist without losing dignity, that letting someone see you doesn't mean giving yourself away. It means standing fully in who you are without apology. You are in my heart not as someone who completed me, but as someone who reminded me I was already whole. You didn't build strength for me. You revealed the strength that was waiting underneath everything else, learning to trust itself again. He choose you in ways that announce themselves. Not with grand gestures or dramatic vows, but with repetition, with return, with the quiet decision made again and again when no one is watching. Choice is different from desire. Desire can spike and fade. Choice settles in and does the work. And every day, in small unnoticed moments, my heart makes that choice without asking for permission or reward. I choose you when the day is ordinary and nothing feels cinematic, when routines stack up and life moves in straight lines instead of curves. I choose you then because that's where truth lives, not in highlights, but in consistency. Love that survives only excitement isn't strong enough to last. Love that survives normal life has depth. And this has depth. There are mornings when the world feels open and light, and there are days when it feels heavy before it even begins. On both kinds of days, the choice remains the same. Not because it's easy, not because it's automatic, but because it's aligned. Choosing you do. Doesn't require effort, it requires honesty, and honesty keeps pointing me back to you. I don't choose you out of habit. Habits go numb, this doesn't. I choose you with awareness, with clarity, with the understanding that choice means responsibility. It means showing up even when emotions are quiet, especially when emotions are quiet, because that's when commitment reveals itself, not as pressure, but as presence. There's a version of love that waits for conditions to be perfect, for timing to cooperate, for certainty to arrive wrapped in guarantees. That version waits forever. This doesn't wait. This moves forward with what's real instead of what's ideal. It chooses despite uncertainty, not because of it. I choose you when I could walk away and simplify things, when choosing less would be easier, when detachment would cost less emotionally. And still, the heart doesn't retreat. It steps forward calmly, knowing that meaning often lives on the other side of risk. Choice isn't about posses, Ion. It's about direction, about deciding where the heart belongs even when the path isn't fully visible. And my direction keeps leading back to you, not in circles, in intention. There are days when I don't need reassurance, and days when I do. On both, the choice doesn't change. It's not dependent on validation. It's not fueled by fear of loss. It's grounded in recognition. I recognize you as someone worth choosing even when outcomes aren't guaranteed. I don't choose you because you make everything easy. I choose you because you make things honest. You don't erase complexity. You give it context. You don't promise perfection. You offer truth, and truth is something I can build with. This choice doesn't demand anything from you. It doesn't bind or restrict. It exists freely, strong enough to stand without needing control. That's how I know it's real. Real choices don't need force. They sustain themselves through clarity. I choose you when I imagine the future, not as a fantasy, but a continuation of daily life, as shared silence, as mutual respect, as two people standing side by side without losing themselves. That image feels stable. That matters. Every day the world gives reasons to become distant, to protect, to withdraw, to stay neutral. And every day my heart responds by leaning in, not recklessly, intentionally, with awareness of what's at stake and acceptance of that risk. You are in my heart because my heart keeps choosing you, not once, not impulsively, but steadily, repeatedly, in ways that don't need witnesses, in ways that don't require applause, in ways that remain even when nothing is being said.